begin in Washington this morning, where control of the U.S. Congress is hanging in the balance. Democrats defied expectations in the midterm elections, and the anticipated red wave failed to materialize.
I'm just so proud of the race that we ran. And, this campaign has always been about fighting for everyone who's ever been knocked down that ever got back up.
In a key victory for the Democrats, John Fetterman beat TV personality Dr. Mehmet Oz to flip a Senate seat in Pennsylvania. Fetterman campaigned while recovering from a stroke. The race for the Senate is currently deadlocked, and who ends up in control may not be known for some time.
God bless each and every one of you. Good morning. Keep the faith.
I want to thank you guys for coming out. And thank you guys for being here. And thank you guys for all your support. I'm not leaving you.
In Georgia, Democrat Raphael Warnock and Republican Herschel Walker are locked in a tight Senate race that may end up in a runoff. Other key Senate races too close to call include Arizona, Nevada, and Wisconsin. As for the House, there was no sweep for the Republicans. Let's go live to Georgia now, where CTV's Richard Madan is standing by. And Richard, a lot of Americans waking up this morning, some probably very surprised not to see that Republican sweep that many were anticipating.
Yeah, that big red wave Republicans were talking about really turned out to be a fizzle. It was not a terrible night for President Joe Biden, but it was really a really bad night for Donald Trump. His Trumpian politics really seemed to sour. Many of his back candidates failed to get those votes to put them over the finish line, including here in Georgia, where Herschel Walker, the Republican Senate candidate, really underperformed if you compare those Republican votes to Republican Governor Brian Kemp. And that suggests that there's a so-called split in the ticket split, where you get Republicans voting for Brian Kemp, but they didn't really come out for Herschel Walker. And that's a similar pattern that we're seeing in Pennsylvania. You're seeing this in Arizona and Michigan. So I think Republicans are going to have a bit of a soul searching, that they just didn't materialize all those votes. They didn't tap into all this economic and political headwinds that Joe Biden was facing heading into these midterms. But it is important to recognize that they will likely control the House. So Republicans will have one lever of power, but they didn't get that overwhelming mandate that they thought they would heading into these critical midterms.
Right, and let's talk a little bit about the outcome now for Joe Biden. What is that going to mean for him moving forward?
Well, he does have some headwinds. He does have some problems. His agenda will face more gridlock, more resistance now that Republicans appear to have at least won the House. The Senate is an open question. We still don't know what's going to happen. Georgia is going to play a pivotal role. We can get back to that in a moment. But Republicans have already vowed that should they win control of the House, we're going to see more investigations against Joe Biden, against his son, Hunter Biden. There's going to be investigations about the botched withdrawal from Ukraine. Some Republicans are talking about impeaching Joe Biden. So there's going to be a whole myriad of headwinds for Biden, but it will not be as strong of a mandate by Republicans. If this holds, if the incumbents hold, and if the Republicans do win the House, they will have a razor-thin majority. But the loudest, most vocal members of the Republican conference are those Trumpian members of Congress on the House side. And what we see with these overall results across the country is that moderate voters have kind of rejected the Trumpian side of politics, looking instead to either flip these Trumpian seats to the Democrats. So I think there's going to be a bit of soul searching for Republicans moving forward. Biden, of course, has got his work cut out for him, but ultimately this dynamic has really changed. I think Republicans are going to have more soul searching than the Democrats.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about the races that we're watching so closely in Georgia, where you are people across the United States really watching this with quite a lot of anticipation. So as you were mentioning, Governor Brian Kemp, he has been reelected in Georgia, beating out Stacey Abrams once again. Kemp, somebody that Trump did not support after Kemp didn't want to support Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. Talk to us a little bit more about what people in Georgia could expect to see in the days to come as the counts keep coming in for Walker and Warnock.
Right. So here in Georgia, there's a unique rule in elections that a candidate has to win 50% of the vote to be declared the winner. But obviously, Warnock and Walker did not reach that threshold. So that triggers an automatic runoff election in the first week of December. So we're not really going to know who's going to win this pivotal state until after that. And remember, with the Senate race this close, whoever wins Georgia could tip that balance of power, determining which party wins control of the Senate. So Georgia is once again playing a significant role. This, of course, was the state that elected 2 Democrats in the last congressional cycle, giving Democrats their razor-thin majority. It could deliver the same thing to either Republicans or Democrats. So voters here are watching in a great anticipation. What happens in turnout has been off the charts. It's already set records, at least on the advanced turnout side. But getting back to what we were saying earlier, Georgia is a pristine example as to what is really happening across the country. Overall, you have Republicans that came out and voted in droves for Brian Kemp. Kemp won the governor's race handedly against Stacey Abrams in that rematch, but they didn't come out in droves for Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker underperformed. He should have gotten over the top if Republicans voted straight down the ticket. They voted for Kemp, they voted for Walker. That didn't happen. So now that we're going into overtime, to use a football term, Republicans are going to be looking at this very closely. Why did Herschel Walker underperform? And there's one link you can make. He's a Trump-backed candidate. Many moderate Republicans were a little uncomfortable about his history of domestic violence, reports that he paid 2 women to have abortions, despite the fact that he himself is a staunch pro-life candidate. So it could be a bit of local issues, but ultimately, Trumpism is Donald Trump may be a liability for the party as specifically in the suburbs and with moderate voters. So there's a lot to digest as these results come in, but it sure paints an interesting dynamic, what we're seeing across the country and voter intentions.
Right, and it'll be interesting to hear what Donald Trump has to say after all this. Thank you so much, CTV's Richard Madan reporting for us from Georgia. And as we look live again at Washington, we will continue to track those key states still up for grabs and bring you the latest midterm results as they happen.